Engagers, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of using games and gamification in our daily lives, for example, to learn what we are teaching. And I am Rob Alvarez. I work at Ironhack, teach at IE Business School University, and so much more, and host this podcast. If you have an extra second, please go ahead and subscribe for free to our email list at professorgame.com/subscribe. Hey Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast, and we have Norhan with us today. But before we take off, Norhan, we need to know, are you prepared to engage?
Always.
Let's do this because she is originally a pharmacist who fell in love with games and using gamification to transform learning experiences. And she decided to leave her career as a pharmacist and focus on using gamification in education. She's specifically focused on nonprofits and the underprivileged communities, and she has worked with different entities, which are multinational, public, private, and nonprofits, on designing gamified learning programs, which diversified and enriched her experience. And she is now pursuing her Master's of Public Administration and finishing her last semester in Berlin to enrich that experience with global exposure. So, Norhan, is there anything we're missing from that intro that we should comment on?
This is great. Couldn't have said it better.
Fantastic. So, Norhan, we always like to, get to know our guests a little bit beyond sort of the intro. So, can you tell us what does, a regular day with Norhan look like? What does being Norhan nowadays feel like?
Well, nowadays I'm sort of taking a break from work and focusing more on my master's. So it's between my classes, my assignments, and I usually like to have time to play games on a daily basis or watch like a new movie or a new show. So that's what keeps me going. I don't want my mind to get rusty, and this is what inspires me. So I like to keep this in my mind. And at some point I do some freelance work. So I have to find time for this in my day.
It sounds great. Sounds pretty exciting. So talking about, that work that you do as well with gamification, maybe it's about the freelance job. I don't know. You will be the one to decide. But we would like to know about a story, a story about a time specifically where you were trying to do things one way and they went completely the other way. One of those fail moments or first attempts in learning. Maybe you would like to call it your favorite fail. I don't know. Whatever that looks like, we want to be there with you. We want to learn from that story. We want to learn from your experience. So take it away.
Okay, I know people don't like to talk about their failures, but I think this is one of my failures that I learned a lot from. I was working with an international nonprofit, and I was designing a board game about the business model canvas for underprivileged children in a rural place in Egypt. And they just wanted to teach them about entrepreneurship. And I was so excited, and I started to study their persona and just prepare for the demo and things like that. And we reached the point where we're doing the testing. So this is where it failed because I started, instead of going to a focus group from the community, I chose a group of children from like a regular community, not underprivileged. I also tested it with instructors that are dealing with the same children. And the third stakeholder, or the third person who did the testing, was one of my mentors. So each one of those gave me a perspective about the game, but it was like it was a lot of feedback, and I felt like it's not working. While it was, but not for the persona that I was designing for, and even for the children that I made the testing with. They were not really satisfied because the elements there did not match their persona. So there was lots of things going wrong with it. But what I have learned from this experience was that each one of the people who did the testing, or the persona who did the testing, were very beneficial. Each one of them gave me a different edge. The children gave me the player edge, if we can say that. And the instructors gave me, they always observe the children. So sometimes, children are not expressing what they feel in the correct words, or maybe I won't understand them correctly, but the instructors know them. So they would give me another perspective to clarify what the children were saying. And then the mentor, he gave me like perspective of how it could go after that. It was like a professional eye, which showed me how it could change. So what I took from that is that the next time I'm going to test, I have to make sure I'm going through my target audience, and that I need those 3 parties or maybe more parties to do the testing, so that when I launch the game or the project, I would guarantee better results. And I would make sure I covered all the gaps all the places where it might fail.
So I'm wondering here. Let me see if I got this one right. So you went to create your design. You did a prototype, hopefully, and not still the final product. But then when you went for testing, you got some feedback that was not so positive, right? That's what happened.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fail moment, but it's definitely not even close to being a failure, because that's the time exactly to get that feedback. And you got that feedback from the right people as well, right? People who were experts in one way or another and were giving you feedback on how to improve. And that's what, doing the play testing, doing the prototype, and iterating is all about. So actually, I wouldn't tell you, well done, Norhan. I would actually say that's a positive, a good story about a time where, you went one way, you got feedback, and hopefully you did manage to pivot. How do we have a happy ending here?
Actually, no, because I left the place I was designing for. The game was designed. I was designing the game for before the final version was launched. So currently, I don't know what happened after that.
Well, somebody took over your project in some capacity, I guess. We're crossing all our fingers here. Hopefully, that project is out there, thriving, and people are enjoying and having a very good learning experience with what you created, plus whatever iterations they did upon that with further testing. So Norhan, actually, let's take a shift on that one. We went for a fail or a difficult moment because, eventually it was not your project anymore for whatever reason. But now we want to go for a positive one, actually something that ended up, had a happy ending. We would like to be there with you and perhaps even know what do you think are maybe some of the elements that led away to that success.
I can just talk about one of my latest projects.
Fantastic.
Before I came to Berlin. That was for another international nonprofit, but it was an internal training. Their trainings were not like engaging at all. They were like you're just going there, just do the training, next, and that's it. You could have engagement in a quiz or something. So when they came to the company that I was working for, they wanted something engaging and gamified, and that would be different from what they have. And actually, I pitched an idea. It was for the induction training. So I pitched an idea that whenever an employee is coming over, he would be your ambassador, and he needs to get like a passport. So whenever he's done with one of the topics, he would get his passport stamped. At first, they didn't like it, and it was weird for them because they are not used to this kind of courses or trainings or using those elements. So I had to do like a simple demo for them to show them how it would work, and actually it worked, and they enjoyed. Whenever I use Agile, so whenever we were done with one part, I used to send it and get their feedback. Anyways, the happy ending is a couple of weeks ago, I met one person of the same entity, but it was from another team. And I was asking about this project. And she told me, like, is this the one that they pitched in the last big meeting that we had? That was amazing. I was really happy because
Nice.
I felt like, other people, other teams are talking about my work and they really feel the impact. And they were really excited about the results of this project.
Sounds very exciting. Thank you very much for sharing that. And would you say that there is, again, maybe some elements, I think you mentioned a couple, but that you would say, well, this actually was a success, or I hypothesize it was a success because, is there something along those lines? Or it could be several things, of course.
I think I was trying to make this theme so that people would get into a story, because I felt like the story would be the thing that fits within this persona of that place. And how I tried to find the balance between the fact that their trainings were so professional And at the same time, I don't want to do this huge shift that it would be like so game-like, so the people would not accept it. So I try to find this balance whenever I use the mini game or whenever I use any activity within the theme and within the course. So I think those were the most important things. And of course, using agile process was very important.
So not only did you intentionally look for that balance because you felt that your audience was not going to be like super gamey, but you also used the agile process of sort of testing, doing a small thing, iterating upon that, testing again, iterating upon that, and so on. Did I get that one right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Norhan, we've been discussing a couple of projects that you do, but I know you've been doing several others as well. And when you're facing a project, and it seems you're very focused on learning and education, do you follow some form of a process, some series of steps? Like, how would you approach a project if you got another one just like tomorrow? What would be your thought process?
Let's say it mimics design thinking a lot, but with the empathy step as the main and most important step, and having the persona is as a central part where every step just gets back to the player persona, and how would it benefit each step. And it's like our guide. Whenever I'm going through a step, I have to get back. Will it work? Will it match the persona? Will it match the motivation that we think the player has? This is mainly what happens. I mix the design thinking with this, and of course with being agile with the clients. And I think the second most important step would be the testing. If we're just still following the design thinking process, it's very important. And I've learned that about its importance the hard way. Whenever I go for a project.
Sounds great. Actually, it sounds like something that we talked about in a previous question, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Norhan. Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification. And Norhan, would you say that there is some form of a best practice? One of those things that you say, well, if you want your project to be good or at least better, you should be considering doing this thing or thinking about this thing this way. Is there not a silver bullet, of course, but something that would actually at least help you make your project better?
I think it's about the first step when you're studying the player persona. This is very important one because it guides you all over the way, as I said earlier. And again, it's about all the testing and how to align everything together and how to make sure that the small elements that you're using are hitting the learning objectives if you're working about an educational project, and are hitting the motives, the player motives, and are fitting with the persona. And you can make sure that it works during the testing phase again. So I just keep saying empathy and testing all over.
Empathize and make sure you're actually empathizing, right?
Yes.
That's beautiful.
It's so tricky, you just think that you know the player and you just study the persona and you did your work, but then you go and test it, you've understood something in the wrong way. It doesn't work this way. And maybe there are some aspects about the user or the player that you're designing for that you didn't see correctly, and you get to see it during the testing. I believe those are the two most important ones. And there is that thing that designers, I believe most of the designers are a bit biased towards their design and their ideas, and getting closer to the player and going through the testing reveals that you are biased. You need to step back. Your design is not your baby, and you're doing this for the player, and you need to make sure it fits him.
Wow, we should engrave that one. Your design is not for you, it's for your player, and it should fit them. Let's do an engraving with that one. I love it.
Yeah, this is very important because I've been struggling with this for some time.
We all do, because we do have our own biases all the time. And it is all about having strategies to realize that they're there and to try to get them out of the way as much as we can. And that's what, again, empathizing and testing can be all about, right?
And also simplifying things, because sometimes we just add elements and we add some dynamics and things, while it's very simple. Sometimes the simpler the idea is, the more impactful it would be.
Yes, simplification as well. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And Norhan, you've given us plenty of good recommendations, some of your best practices. Is there somebody that you think about? You're hearing these questions, you're answering these questions yourself, and you say, "Oh, actually, this person, I would be very excited or very interested in listening to them answering these questions as well." So, kind of a future guest for Professor Game.
I think Ian Bogost, if you heard about him.
Yeah, the game designer.
He's a video game designer, and he has this book about persuasive games. And I would be really interested to hear his part of the story, his philosophy, and how he thinks about games. I think that would be very interesting.
Yes, he's very, very interesting. Has several books. I think I have one. The other one I have is Not Persuasive Games. It's How to Do Things with Video Games or something like that. Very, very interesting as well. He shows some very interesting examples as well. One of the things I love about Ian is that he's very deep. He goes deep into things. It's not just surface level. He goes, he takes a topic and he goes all in and he digs out everything. So yes, definitely a great potential guest. And we mentioned a couple of books by Ian Bogost. Could be those books, another book, or anything in between. Is there a book that you would recommend this audience of the engagers, people who are interested in gamification? And again, it could be a gamification book or something that has nothing to do with that as well. Maybe it's some sort of crazy inspiration you've gotten.
Well, I have always liked this book for Daniel H. Pink, Drive.
Yes.
I think it's a very interesting book. And I read it several times. And whenever I go back and read it, I reflect on what's in there differently because I have different experience. I have different thing. So I think it's an amazing book and it's worth reading.
Sounds like a very good recommendation for sure. So Daniel Pink's Drive. Thank you very much for that, Norhan. And keeping up that sort of recommendation space, instead of recommending what other people are doing great, what would you say in your case is your superpower? That thing that you do at least better than most other people?
I think my superpower would be putting a story to things. Like when I have any project idea and I have those, for example, learning objectives, and I want to match them together, I can get inspired from something and make it customized to match those things and put it in some sort of a story. I really like storytelling and I really like to get inspired from what's happening around me and put things together, like putting all the pieces of the puzzle together to make it work for the player and fit what would work for him, what would help him learn that new thing that we need him to learn.
So we got ourselves a storyteller. Fantastic. Very important superpower, especially in the world of gamification and, to be honest, in human interaction as well. So you also mentioned that you like to play at least some games every single day, right? So that's part of your daily routine. And this question might come as a bit difficult because those of us who like to play games have a difficult time picking the favorite child, right? So what would you say is your favorite game?
I would go for a typical one that I like to play with my sisters at home. It's Monopoly Deal. You know, the card one?
Monopoly, or is it a version of Monopoly?
It's a version of Monopoly, but using cards, not the classical one with the board game.
No, I haven't played it.
You need to do it because I was raised as a child playing the version with the board, and it was very frustrating because it felt like it's non-ending. It doesn't end. But when I played the card game, it has an end. There is an obvious winning stake. So I like the card game more.
Okay.
I think it's my favorite because it's something emotional, because it's tied with home and with my sisters.
Well, that makes sense. Games, give us as well all this sense of nostalgia, especially as we start, passing from the phase of being kids into being adults. The nostalgia factor is definitely something that brings us good memories and makes us feel good. And that's great. That's what games are about as well, making us feel good. And in our case, many times as well, getting inspired for doing more and better designs. So that is a great idea. I probably have to test it out. I haven't played it. So Monopoly Deal.
Yes.
Right, Norhan? What would you say, because we do every now and then have a random question from the audience. So this is a question coming from the audience. I clicked on it to make sure we got a random one before. And this is what we have. This is, okay, I think that this one makes a lot of sense with what we were discussing before. So this person is saying, how can we show the value of gamification to a corporate client? Do you have any best practices? Because I know you've also worked with corporations. This one came into the list and is the one that came out today.
I think for corporates, you need to build a business case. I think this is easy right now because you can just find lots of research in literature talking about how impactful games are in increasing the productivity and increasing the innovation and the employee motivation, for example. So maybe it depends on this corporate, what they're doing, what their objectives are, and you just build the business case based on this. It works most of the time. This is one thing. The other thing I believe is to get them to play. If it's about increasing engagement, for example, if that's their objective, maybe when you pitch your business case, just take like 2 to 3 minutes and ask them to play a game and see how it motivates them, how it increases the engagement towards a topic. I believe that will be perfect if you're pitching an idea with gamification for a corporate.
So actually getting them to experience what it is that you are pitching them to do with their clients, their employees, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for that inspiration, for that idea, Norhan, because I'm sure plenty of the engagers listening in on the audience have, at some point or another struggled with this situation of, oh, I hate games. Oh, I do this. Or, what is it? We are a serious company and so on. So it's sometimes difficult to convince that corporate client.
Mm-hmm.
So Norhan, thanks again so much for all of the things, all of the experiences you've been sharing with us. Do you have any final piece of advice you want to share with the engagers? Any final words? This is your time, whatever you want to say. And of course, let us know how we can find more about you and about your work. How can we get in contact, basically?
Okay, I think the most important thing is to just keep learning because this industry is fast growing and it's changing a lot. So we just need to keep up and keep learning about what's happening all around us, learning about psychology and behaviors and how to influence them. Keep reading and playing games, of course. Maybe watch movies and mute series because this is what inspires me. And how to contact me, the best and shortest way is through my email or LinkedIn.
Sounds fantastic. So if you want to get in touch with Norhan, you can just type on professorgame.com, type Norhan, Norhan, type Norhan there. You'll definitely find this episode and you'll find all the links to get in contact with her, LinkedIn, and many other links that we'll have there for you. So Norhan, thank you very much once again. I hope I pronounced your name because I said it like 20 times. I pronounced it decently.
Well, that's the right way.
Good. I should have asked at the start. I usually do that. So, Norhan, thanks.
No, you're good.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. So thanks for being here. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, engagers. Thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And we like to do this podcast because we're able to be here to be with you. So how about we connect on Twitter? Let me know, whatever you want to let me know. We can connect, you can reply, you can do whatever you want with that information. You can just let me know about your things. What are you doing? I'd love to take a look perhaps at what projects you're working on. That's always very, very interesting. I'm always looking, researching what are people working on. You can find me as Rob Alvarez B, at Rob Alvarez B on Twitter. And I'm always sharing, content on gamification, discussing these things, discussing the episodes as well. And as you know, I'm especially sort of biased towards education. And before you click continue, before you move on to your next game, your next task, whatever you're doing, please remember to subscribe or follow absolutely for free using your favorite podcast app. And then listen to the next episode of the Professor Game podcast. See you there.